Yo, what's good, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another Tyler Perry's ZATIMA review. This is season 2, episode 13, entitled Never Too Late. If this is your first time coming to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning family member, then you already know what it is and what it always will be. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff if you choose to. If not, just sit back, relax, and we're going to get right into this thing. Now, first thing first, let me just say that this review is going to have a different tone than what my normal reviews sound like, mainly because this episode was extremely heavy. It was a very heavy episode. It was extremely emotional, and we finally see Zach at the therapist's office with his mom, his brother Jeremiah, and Fatima. And one of the reasons why I wanted to present this particular review a little differently is because I know that I'm going to say some things that's probably going to cause some debates, which is fine. And I look forward to it. And, and I just wanted to have a different tone to this video. Now, for those who have been following me for a while, you know that I have never, ever been fond of the character of Zach. He's definitely not my favorite. And I really borderline don't like him. For several reasons, and in this episode, it just reaffirmed the reason why I've always felt a certain way about the character of Zach. I also want to point out, too, that I do not discredit the childhood trauma that the character of Zach has experienced or any of his experiences, yet Zach is a man who lacks responsibility and accountability, and it shows by his consistent blaming of his shortcomings on other people. So let's just get into it. So the first scene is everybody is at the therapist's office. You know, Fatima comes in there. She's kind of blindsided because the therapist, which I can't think of his name right now, told her that he wanted her to come so that they could talk about Zach. And the reality was he got her there on false pretenses, the same way that Fatima did when she initially invited the therapist to her and Zach's house for dinner. And I'm like, okay, from this point on, that means that it doesn't matter the situation, the conversation, or circumstance, Zach can no longer bring up this situation as far as Fatima lying to him about this therapist. And the more I thought about it, I was like, is Zach really upset that Fatima had this therapist come over and that she wasn't honest about it? Or does Zach really feel a way because he believes that Fatima thinks something is wrong with him? And that's what I'm wondering. I'm like, what is he really mad about? Or was he just using that as a scapegoat or an excuse? So Fatima sits down. Even though Fatima has had an engagement with Gladys, this was really the first time she really heard this woman speak to Zach in such a disrespectful and condescending way. Even for me listening, I was like, wow, this woman really has no type of motherly instinct at all. Now, do I believe that Gladys and Jeremiah should have been brought to a therapy session? I honestly do not, because it is obvious that both of these individuals are strung out. Both of them have a addiction, and it shows. You have Jeremiah over there. He got the little crackhead scratch, and the walking back and forth. You have Gladys, who is obviously not in her right mind. The only thing that she wants is Zach's money. That is the only benefit she sees for him, and that is the only thing that he can obviously do right now for her. And I know that as a child, that has to be a hard thing to accept or to embrace, that your parent doesn't want anything to do with you. Now, I have not had a parent who have been on drugs or was strung out or anything like that, but I do know what it's like for a parent, which was my father, to write a letter to my mother basically ready to sign away his parental rights. And that messed me up as a kid, reading that. And I'm like, why would he? Like, I don't really see him like that anyway. And we lived in different states and so on and so forth. So he wasn't a presence in my life. But I'm like, I don't even see you. You don't really do anything for me. And the last thing I would expect for him to have done at that time was to write a note to my mother stating that he would be willing to right away, his parental rights. And that's like, you almost feel abandoned. You kind of feel unwanted. So there are a plethora of emotions I know that I felt during that time. And I want to say I was like in the 8th grade or so, but I remember that as if it was yesterday. It's very, very vivid. And so when I thought about Zach and what he must have endured growing up, hearing the things that his mom was saying to him, the way that she treated him, abandoning him, leaving him at home alone with no food, no money, no anything, and he doesn't know where she is, and he doesn't know where his brother is. Now, I do have a great amount of compassion for Zach when it comes to that. I also have a great amount of compassion for Jeremiah, because even though he is the older brother, he was still raised in the same household with the same mother. And so I would expect for him to do some of the same things that he's doing. Even though he's the older brother, it is obvious that Jeremiah has this idea that Zach owes him because he went to jail for Zach. And then, we find out that Zach had gotten in trouble many a times, all due to the actions and the plans of his older brother Jeremiah. And normally in a family dynamic, when you are the youngest, you tend to look up to your older siblings. You tend to want to follow in their footsteps or do the things that they do. And it looks like Zach kind of had that with his brother, even though Jeremiah was definitely going in the wrong direction with his life. So Gladys, I do not believe could have been any help to Zach. It was kind of like what the therapist was telling him. The things that you want from your mother, she is incapable of giving that to you in her current state. She's just not able to do that. And I think one of the hardest things in life to accept is what you desire from someone else, and coming to the knowledge that they are incapable of giving you that. They can't give you that. They don't possess the qualities in order to become what you want them to become, behave how you want them to behave. And sometimes we begin to fashion and form people in our minds. And then you have to realize people are not puppets. You can't pull a string and they say the things you want them to say, or pull a string and they're able to conduct themselves the way you see fit. That's just not life. That's not how it works, regardless of the relationship and the dynamic that you may have with someone. So I'm looking at Fatima's face, and Fatima is getting an earful. She's getting an earful from Jeremiah. She's getting an earful from Gladys. And I think Fatima knew things were bad, but I don't think she knew that they were that bad. Gladys was ready to go. All she needed was her money. And that was it. She disrespected Zach, called him out his name, letting him know that nobody wanted him. And this when things began to take a turn for me. Zach began to talk. Zach was fed up, and I get it and I understand it. The one thing, as I mentioned earlier when I first started the video, is that Zach does not take responsibility, nor does he take accountability for his actions. Zach is a grown 36-year-old man. Now, before anybody say anything, just listen before you get the typing, before them thumbs get the thumbing. What I'm saying is I do have compassion for Zach. But the one thing, and this is just me as a person, I have an issue with individuals who places blame on other people without looking within to see how they have contributed to the issue or the problem. Now, Zach begins to tell his mother and his brother that, he has someone in his life who loves him. And he's been messing it up, and it's because of them. It's their fault. It's because of what they did. I said, now, Zach, I can't agree with that, brother. I can't agree with that. Your mother and your brother didn't make you tell Fatima that you slept with Connie, and you didn't. Your parent, your mom and your brother didn't make you tell Fatima that you had sex with Karen a couple seasons ago, and you know that you didn't. They didn't make you do that. Your mom and your brother didn't make you insinuate that Fatima was giving head to Paul when you saw them in the elevator. Everything that has happened in Zach's life, his mom and his brother cannot be the blame. They are not the blame. They are just living excuses that Zach has always used as a crutch. And I think the more we see him go to therapy, the more that he's going to realize that Zach is who he is because that's who he chooses to be. It has nothing to do with his mom, and it has absolutely nothing to do with his brother. And I do know that sometimes, and I'm someone, I have gone to therapy, I've been to counseling as well. And I started going to counseling when I was 16 years old after my mother was shot in an attempted carjack. And I went back, I missed like 2.5 months of school because it happened in a different state. And when I got back to school, my school set it up where I had counseling and everything like that. And when you are that young, and even older, sometimes you don't know how to compartmentalize these emotions that you're having. Sometimes they come at you all at one moment. Sometimes you are very disconnected from how you feel, and you're kind of zombie as you are moving and maneuvering through life, but you're void of emotion. You're void of expressing any type of emotion. And I think with Zach, the only emotion that he could relate to was pleasure, because it makes me think that as a child, he was void of that. What it feels like when your mom, bring you a toy, when your mom take you out for ice cream or pizza. There's a euphoric feeling that comes over you when you experience those things. And it's obvious that Zach didn't experience that, which could be a reason why he is so sex crazed. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, but strong possibility. But even going back to therapy, when you begin to talk and you begin to hear yourself and you begin to, deal with yourself. And I was telling my mom this, I said, one of the hardest things in life to do is understanding that you can never run from yourself. When you in your room or you in your car, you by yourself and you're with your thoughts, your ego doesn't matter. How you esteem yourself doesn't matter. You just face with the truth. And you can only run from the truth for so long, so when you have to deal with who you are, when you have to destroy your ego, when you have to destroy the image that you put out in the world that's not really you, when you have to break down who you are, destroy all of the stuff you made up and really deal with you. That is a hard place. Sometimes that could be a dark place. It could be a very hurtful place. And I'm excited to see Zach, and I hope we get to see that. And I pray that Tyler does not bypass this with some of the stuff he usually do. And my whole thing is, because he has presented the idea of therapy and Zach to us, I really hope that he does it in an effective way. So after Zach gives them the money, which I wouldn't have given them the money, but he gives his mom the money, and her and Jeremiah leave. And so it's just Fatima and Zach there. And so one of the things that Fatima stated, she told Zach that it was big of him because it takes sometimes a long time to address the person that you feel like you need to be healed from. And a lot of times it's with parents. And she was like, she went to therapy in her late 20s, and it took her a long time to be able to face and address her parents. And the fact that he did that at the first time, it says a lot. And the therapist made, mention of that as well. And one of the things I found interesting is that it appears that Zach did this for Fatima. And Fatima recognized it, and Fatima called it out. Because she was like, Zach, this has to be done for you. This change has to be for you. Otherwise, it's pretty much null and void. There's no purpose in doing it if you're doing it for someone else. And I feel like Zach wanted that microwave effect. Hey, I'm at therapy. I brought my brother. I brought my mama. Okay, this is what happened. Me and you should be able to move on from this situation. And that's not life. It just doesn't work out like that. But in Tyler Perry world, it can. But unfortunately, that is not the way. Well, I'm going to say fortunately. That's just not how things go. You have to put in the work. You have to do it. And right now, Zach only came to one therapy session. The work has not been done yet. So he tells Fatima that he needs her. He's crying. He doesn't want her to leave him. They can make it work. And Fatima's just not there. She said that some of her feelings for him basically was put on ice. And he asked her, you don't love me anymore. And she was like, I love you. And that's another thing too. Sometimes I feel like it's manipulative speech. Like, oh, so you don't love me no more. And it's like, she loves you. She definitely loves you, but your actions can affect how someone feels. And so when Fatima brought up the fact of her being hurt by Zach, by the way he acted during the elevator situation, the things that he said to her. And he was like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. And it's like, no, listen to what this woman told you. Listen to what she's saying. She's saying your words hurt me and your actions hurt me. And you just can't bypass that with I'm sorry. And I believe when you get someone in your life, whether it's a platonic relationship or even if it's romantic, when you have someone that begins to hold you accountable, where accountability has been void in your life, you tend to kind of dismiss them. You tend to dismiss them. You tend to think, though, you think you better than me. And it's like, no, that's not it. But I do know that if you don't get it this time, you're going to continue to make the same intentional actions. I don't want to say mistakes. The intentional actions over and over and over again. And so I was glad that Fatima chose herself and that Fatima walked out. I was so happy. I was so proud because Zach is not in a good place. You know, Zach was like, I'm dying. I don't want to be in this dark place by myself. And, you know, she left and told him to, you know, finish talking to the doctor. And, you know, she was like, I'm sorry, Zach. You know, she walked away, which I was extremely happy that she did for Fatima choosing herself. Because when you look at the duration of their relationship, everything has been so Zach heavy. Almost everything that they've gone through, they've experienced, they've endured, it has all pretty much been because of Zach, for Zach, through Zach, and by Zach. You know what I'm saying? Almost like FUBU, for us, by us. Everything almost is always been about him. And that is not a healthy relationship. It's not a balanced relationship either. So I was glad when she left. So Nate comes over to talk to Zach. This scene, the supporting cast on ZATIMA, and it's ironic. The person I like the most is Deja, because I understand Deja's purpose. I understand her purpose. Her purpose is quite clear for me, and Jazzy plays it so well. I really do like the character of Deja, even though she starts all this drama and stuff. I do like her. The character of Nate, I don't even know why he came over to talk to Zach. Their interaction, for me, it was like watching two middle school kids have a conversation. I really could have done without this scene. Everything excluding the conversation between Zach and his mom and his brother at the therapy office, and Zach and Fatima. Even the talk with Zach and Angelo, I could deal with that too. But the side characters, I just don't understand it. Zach pretty much, you know, told Nate he needed to leave. And, you know, like, you don't even want me with Fatima. You don't like her, like all these different things. And they've had this conversation before. I'm just not sure why Zach is friends with him. He told him he needed a break. But we know it's not going to last long. But anyway, so Fatima's at Angela's and they have a conversation. And she tells Angela that Zach was in therapy. And she told her a little bit about her experience being in the therapy session. And, you know, Angela asked her, like, are you going to give him a second chance? This is why having friends is so vitally important. And also knowing when you don't need to communicate with your friends. So the fact that Angela asked Fatima, was she going to give Zach a second chance, as if she just was not at this man's house 2 nights ago, when you saw how Zach was responding, when you saw how angered he was, when you saw all of this stuff transpire in your face, and you ask your friend, is she gonna give this man a second chance? Why would you ask her that? My thing would have been, the moment Fatima told me that Zach was in therapy, I would have been like, okay, sis, that's good. You know, I pray that he continues to go. I hope that he's consistent with it. And I just want you to get back to you. I want you to, my desire is to see you get back in school, to really get back to the Fatima that was about herself, her self-care, her happiness, being healthy mentally. Sis, that's where I want to see you. Angela is just so messy in the sense of, she just messy. Because I just couldn't imagine asking my friend that after what I saw with my own eyes, after being called out of my name multiple times by this man. I wouldn't want him with my friend. I just wouldn't. So Fatima tells her like she's going out with Paul. She was getting herself ready because he was coming to pick her up. And so Zach ends up going over to Angela's house. This is another thing. And I forgot, somebody mentioned this when me and Erica did the live for our Sister's Keeper last week. And they were saying how all the other men that are associated with Fatima and Karen could be considered stalkers and something wrong with them. But nothing is wrong with Zach, even though he pops up unannounced all the time. So Zach pops up unannounced to Angela's house. I do understand that being persistent can, get you far. But when someone has already told you, like, I'm leaving, goodbye, I'm done, that doesn't give you the right to just pop up wherever they are. So Angela lets him and Fatima have a conversation. And this was something that it was childish. It was childish because he ends up telling Fatima that he did not have sex with Connie. Fatima tells him that she had sex with Paul, so he might as well should have had sex with Connie, and that she's going to have sex with Paul tonight as well. And I said, Fatima, why are you doing this? Why are we here, sis? Why are we stooping now to this level of lying on your box, number one, and lying on this man, and y'all haven't had sex? You couldn't go through with it. So why lie? I don't understand that. And when Zach told Fatima that he didn't have sex with Connie, he was like, I know you don't believe me, but that's the truth. And my thing is, well, why doesn't she believe you, Zach? She doesn't believe you because you told her that you did. And not only that you had sex with Connie, you told her that you loved Connie, and you told her that you gave it to her good and hard, and she loved it. You went on and on and on. You did and said whatever you had to do in order to hurt Fatima. And so I'll finish that. So Fatima was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to, on my date with Paul. I'm leaving. And she left. Now, before she leaves, Angela asked Zach that he wants some wine. When Fatima leaves, she was like, oh, you can go too. And he was like, I thought you said you had some wine. And then she started acting as if, well, yeah, it's old. You're not going to like it. I said, Tyler, Mr. Perry, why does this writing get so lackadaisical at some points? She literally just, I'm not going to go there. But Angela and Zach have a conversation, and we get back to this self-deprecate. I know y'all be talking about me. I know you feel like I ain't shit. I know you feel like I ain't good enough. Boy, ain't nobody say that about you. Stop it. This conversation with Angela was very reminiscent to the conversation that Zach had with Andy when they left the police station, when it was Andy, Zach, and Karen. Very reminiscent. Like, Zach, I think you look good. I think you're a good guy. I think you're this. But, you keep hurting Fatima. Well, I'm not doing it on purpose. Yes, you are. And that goes back to one of them things about accepting accountability and responsibility for your actions. You are intentionally hurting Fatima. You are hurting Fatima on purpose. It is not something you're doing by mistake. It is not because of your mom and your brother. You're doing it because you want to do it. And it made me think about the response that Fatima gave him in the therapy office when she said, I know that when you feel like I'm choosing someone over you, it makes you feel like you're getting abandoned like your mom. I said, sis, I don't agree with that. When have you chosen somebody over Zach? I'm trying to understand that you haven't. You didn't choose Paul. You was literally at your place of employment in the elevator with him. And Zach was tripping because he figured this man like you, as if other men not gonna like you or find you attractive. So you didn't choose anybody. And one thing that I did not like is that people, to me, always give a justification to Zach's actions. Oh, it's because his mom did this. It's because Karen talked down on him. It's because this. And I'm like, no, put the blame on Zach. Zach needs to grow up. Zach is hella childish. Zach does things to hurt people and feel like his feelings should be protected while he shits on other people. That's just what it is. And so when Angela made the statement that Fatima has been through a lot in her life, Zach sucked his teeth and said, well, she ain't the only one who done been through something. And I'm like, see, that right there, prime example. The fact that you don't even really know Fatima that well or about her childhood and everything like that, for one of her best friends to tell you that, she's been through a lot and for you to quickly dismiss it, but then in the same breath say how much you love her, how you want her, how you gonna get her back, how she's yours, yet you're not sensitive nor compassionate to anything that this woman has been through while her best friend tells her that. You quickly dismiss it as if it means nothing. And he walks out the door saying, Fatima's my woman. She's mine. She's mine. I said, Angela was like, don't do nothing stupid. I said, girl, he is. He is. But this episode, like I said, it was emotional. It was emotional. I could appreciate the sentiment of going to therapy, and the compassion that I have is people don't have it all together. None of us do. And when you go to therapy, it just begins to open up certain things that you have to deal with and really get down to the root of the issue. And even though we're seeing the beginning of Zach's process, I do want to be able to see Zach actually come out on the other end of this, and it would be greatly appreciated if we could see Zach begin to walk in a level of maturity that we have never seen him do. Begin to take other people's feelings into consideration before he acts. I really want to see that happen, because we really don't see that happen too much with the character of Zach. And even to men, because I had a conversation with a guy concerning this episode, and we just had a different perspective about it. He was like, he was proud of Zach, and for going to therapy, and he just wished that people would have, or not people, that I would have more of a compassion for Zach. And I said, I do have a compassion for Zach. I am sympathetic to the things that Zach has experienced. But what I am not ever going to do with anybody is that I'm not going to allow anyone to justify their carelessness because of how they were raised. We all know the difference between right and wrong. We know when we're hurting somebody. We know when we're not treating somebody well. We know these things. Like, it's a difference when you don't know, but for the most part, we do know. And I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna, he don't get no passes. He don't get no passes. And I think sometimes too, me and Erica talked about this one night on our Sister's Keeper, is that I think a lot of black men can identify with that, and there's a whole lot of black men who don't. Okay. All right. Because I have some friends who do not, I have some black male friends who do not like Zach. They can't stand Zach. Okay. And then for the ones who identify with Zach, it's like, but what's the reason you're identifying with him? What is it? Because you think, oh, people always look down on me. People expect me to do this. And I'm like, I think I said, so basically what you're telling me is you are accustomed with giving the bare minimum. You are okay with being mediocre. And then when you have someone in your life who begins to challenge that, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And because you don't have the verbiage, you say that they're looking down on you, or you'll never be good enough. And you go into the self-deprecating because that's most comfortable for you, instead of really listening to what that person is saying and using that to become a better version of yourself. And I think that with this episode of ZATIMA, I think if people really look at it for what it is, it can really create a lot of dialogue in relationships, in friendships, in sibling dynamics, parental dynamics. If people really want to be great, we definitely have the tools to do so. So I thank you guys for listening. Like I said, this is going to have a different tone to it. So I appreciate you for everyone who listened to these 28 going on 29 minutes. I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to try to get the review out for episode 14 tomorrow. But baby, Fatima pissed me off. That's all I'm going to say. I thank you guys for listening. And I'm going to holler at y'all later. Until next time, y'all be safe out there.